Welcome, everybody, to another Fireside Chat with Pacvue. I'm Matt, a content marketing specialist, and I have the privilege of speaking with Eli Gurock, Senior Vice President of Marketplaces and Retail Media at Merge, an agency partner of Pacvue. Merge specializes in helping retail brands use their available data to tell impactful product stories through effective performance marketing. They have been one of the leaders in the retail media space, and we're happy to partner with them and to have Eli here with me today. He will be talking about some of the common challenges and opportunities that exist in retail media. And so without further ado, I'll pass it over to him. So Eli, do you have an opinion on what's the biggest challenge for brands right now in terms of retail media?
Yeah, I've got an opinion on everything. I'm just one of those guys, But I talk a lot about retail media, and we talk to a lot of partners, and I think one of the biggest challenges that brands are facing right now is really just how to understand how to use their dollars effectively across so many different retail media networks. Every brand today has a multi-retailer strategy, but very, very few have a multi-retailer media strategy. And unfortunately, that's become what's needed. But also, unfortunately, that means traditional wholesaler sales teams have now become media, or now need to become media experts, and extraordinarily few are. So they need to rely on their digital marketing departments to help them navigate, and this creates complication, and it's really a quickly changing world. It's really tough to navigate and really challenging for brands, and we kind of feel for our brands that way, and that's why we like to help.
So there's a big gap between retail and media. We know brands are looking for more ways to find customers online and target them. So what's the opportunity for brands who aren't using retail media today or just getting started?
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about that gap between retail and media. And I think that gap actually used to be larger. And with the retail media networks, in one way, that gap has become narrower. But to your point, in other ways, it is larger than it's ever been. It needs to be coordinated in a much different way than it's ever been before. But I think that creates opportunity. And anytime you have something new, for those brands who are smart and sophisticated and work with good partners, they can see the opportunity. And so I think the opportunity is there for brands using retail media. I like to point to things like launching new products or boosting products in retailers' rankings. Those are the things where retail media can really make an impact. Everybody wants to have customers discover their new products, but the algorithms that retailers often use fail to favor new products. So by using retail media to catapult new products that have no sales history to positions where customers can actually find them is now really critical for success to launch a successful product.
That's really fascinating. Can you tell me about some of the unique use cases that retail media provides?
Yeah, this is my favorite use case. I talk about this a lot, but we were working with a backpack brand a couple years ago who had a pretty unique problem on Target.com. Their backpacks sold really well during back to school, but during the rest of the year, they really struggled selling those packs. The biggest challenge was that their products just didn't have the sales velocity to hit page number 1 before back to school started, so they were losing about 2 to 3 weeks of sales while they slowly rose in those rankings. We built them a retail media campaign that started before back to school so their products would rise faster in the rankings and they would lose less of that key selling time. Again, I always point to that example because I think it's the best example of where retail media can provide real value to our brands, and it's not just a tax.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know back to school is gearing up now. A lot of brands are also prepping for Q4 already, where competition is even more severe. So we all know that competition for brands in the world of e-commerce is higher than it's ever been before. Can you tell me about some strategies for how brands can outflank their competition through a retail media program?
Yeah, what we try to do is we try to customize that spend and optimize that strategy for each retailer specifically. And we do that really in 2 ways. One is we optimize those listings for each retailer specifically. There is no one size fits all. And in fact, customers don't want to read the same descriptions across every single retailer. They want to see some differentiation. And when you create differentiation, it needs to be relevant to that retailer. And the goal with that is to really ensure organic visibility and overall better ROAS on the paid campaigns. And the number 2 that we try to keep in the back of our heads always is that the same products and the same keywords that work for one retailer might not work for another. So our goal is always to create test, and adapt really, really, really quickly.
That's really insightful. Thank you. So in fact, based on Pacvue data, we see that generic and broad keywords tend to be more popular on Walmart than Amazon, for example, and lower priced items tend to perform better on Walmart. Can you talk a little about how brands can allocate spend appropriately at each touch point in the customer journey?
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody listening to this fireside chat that people shop differently at different retailers. They use different retailers, in fact, for different pieces of that funnel. So for example, customers might like, Macy's navigation and prefer to browse on Macy's, but when they're ready to make a purchase, they want to make that purchase from Amazon or vice versa, or a million different iterations of that. And what we try to do at Merge is try to understand that consumer behavior and be able to allocate budget effectively based on that behavior. And so what we do is we really allocate spend appropriately at each piece of the touch point, right? Consideration, awareness, conversion, to leverage the overall flywheel. But we customize it per retailer, and we say, okay, consideration is going to be stronger on Walmart, but awareness is going to be stronger on Amazon. So as we build our budget, we take all of that into account. And our real goal is to accumulate reviews and by extension, create new awareness for products and build on the traction of mature products to build overall loyalty. And we do that really in 3 ways. One is we create a cohesive strategy between off-site, on-site display, and on-site PPC advertising efforts. And we do that based on where products and product lines are in the product lifecycle. 2, we leverage audience insights to inform new keywords and targets and vice versa, and create its own mini flywheel of just new keywords and targets and campaigns. And then 3, constantly reevaluating assumptions. We look at full funnel advertising impact, and we look at the original goals that we set for the product lines and how we're pacing against them, all with the goal of maximizing ROAS.
With that said, could you recommend how much budget a brand should allocate and maintain during the testing phase?
My general rule of thumb is 10 to 15% of budget should always be allocated for testing. And that's actually high, I would think. Curious to hear what some of my peers would think. But 10 to 15% to me is high, but I think it's really necessary. But what we call testing also includes things like competitor conquesting, cross-selling ability, capitalizing on emerging trends. So it's not just simple A/B testing, but it's us kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks and testing those ideas.
Exactly. So are there any other aspects brands should be looking at or tools they should be leveraging to achieve better results for their advertising campaigns?
I mean, Pacvue, obviously, right?
Of course.
But in all seriousness, our recommendation is always to lean into automation, specifically for things like monthly budget pacing and time of day bid adjustments. That stuff should always, always, always be done programmatically. And our goal is always to make sure that we've got the automation running where it can be most successful and allow us to free up the manual efforts on things like testing new customer acquisition and just brainstorming new ideas.
That's great. Let's dive into the different types of media activations that are most effective for specific situations. For example, product launches, acquiring new to brand customers, or seasonality refreshes.
Yeah, we've already talked a little bit about how retail media can help launch new products and to capture market share during key selling periods. But another really great activation is by using the retailer's first-party data to reach off-site audiences for things like connected TV, display, or even CRM efforts like email and SMS. We all know that cookies are disappearing and the opportunities to do sort of that big data media targeting is diminishing. And retailers know that, and they also know that they're sitting on a mound of data that's increasingly valuable to brands. So being able to use that data effectively through retail media is really an important aspect of the world that's currently going completely unnoticed. And I think over the course of the next 6 to 18 months, we're going to hear a lot more about these media networks using their data to go out to the greater web and find new customers. For
sure. I totally agree with that. So it's been great to see retailers open up some of this data to help brands take action with it. On Amazon Marketing Cloud is really helping people do more effective targeting with Amazon DSP. We had at Pacvue one brand that was able to increase their subscribe and save subscriptions by 12% just by using better DSP targeting. Could you talk about some of the niches or categories that are doing well right now with retail media?
Yeah, I think, like, off the top of my head, I think CPG is just the right niche and category right now for retail media explosion. And every CPG company I'm talking to right now is really, really gung-ho on spending there. But I think in general, the niches or categories with a strong market leader are really ripe for retail media success. We've seen this a couple of times where, like, out of the 9 top spots that a retailer has on a category page, 7 or 8 are owned by just 2 brands. When a category is dominated like that, it's nearly impossible to break into the top half of the fold. And I think that's exactly where retail media can add value. Buying those spots is often the only chance for success in those categories.
Yeah, that's really great insight. Let's jump into talking about budgets. There are so many retailers to advertise with, but a lot of brands are still stumped with figuring out just how much they can do with their available budgets. Can you give me some insight into what brands could do to get the most results from their available budget?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. Like, literally $1 million question, right? A good chunk of our clients are in the apparel space. And though for them, there are 6 or 7 top retailers that they need to advertise with. Our average client has about 300-ish SKUs. So when they need to figure out how to use their budget strategically, they really struggle to figure it out. And not to toot our own horn, but I think that's exactly where Pacvue and Merge come in to play. Together, we have the tools, data, and knowledge to take a granular SKU by SKU and retailer by retailer approach to budget allocation. And we work together with the brands to use their available budget as effectively as possible. There's no easy solution or magic bullet here, and this is probably the top of the top conversations that I hear day in, day out from brands and retailers. Tough.
That does make sense. And that's part of why product level reporting and campaign management is so important, I imagine, so you can get really granular with allocating your budget. So that being said, what is the playbook for retail media? From keywords to content management and optimization strategy, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think is the most important and what brands should be focused on most.
Yeah, I like to start with relevancy. And relevancy is super important in everything we do. And sometimes that comes in the form of keywords, other times that comes in the form of content, and still other times it's a bidding strategy. So my goal is always to make sure that we're being as relevant to the customer and to the brand as possible. I also strongly believe in adding value in everything we do. And if we have to do retail media, which I think sadly we do have to do right now, then let's do it in a way where we're being as helpful as possible to the customer. And I believe that the way to do that is through relevancy. Here at Merge, we really adhere to the principles of using technology to tell really strong brand stories. Retail media is no different. And so our playbook is using the available data to tell the right story to the right customer, hopefully to sell the right product.
Could you tell me a little about how brands should evaluate their retail media performance? This is super important.
Yeah, it is. And I think after that other conversation that said at the top of everybody's list of things they're talking about, this is right afterwards. My background is I come from a direct response marketing background. In fact, the first e-commerce company I worked for was a cataloger who was in the process of going digital. So my answer to that question is always going to be the same. It's always going to be direct attribution. That being said, that's not always the best way to evaluate a program's performance, especially with a niche program, and retail media still is a niche program in my assumption. And so when you're evaluating a niche program, sometimes direct attribution is honestly the worst way to evaluate performance. So the way I typically look at a niche program is based on the initial goals we set up for the campaign or the program or whatever it is. So I also like to match a hard metric with a soft one. I feel that tells a story of both campaign effectiveness as well as campaign health. 2 slightly different things, but you need both to see long-term success. I also like to keep things as stupidly simple as possible. So for example, if a brand wants to run retail media to launch a new product, then the best KPIs to track would be sales goals for that product, would be the hard metric, and ROAS, which would be the soft metric. or if a brand wants to run retail media to gain a larger percentage of share of shelf, if that's their goal, then let's look at the difference between where they currently are and where they started from and where they currently are, and then that cost per position. Again, a hard metric with the soft metric. To me, that's the best thing we've got right now.
Eli, this was so fun today. Thank you so much. That's all the time we have, but I learned a lot from you today. If you've got any questions or comments for us, please drop them down in the comments below. For anyone who wants to learn more, you can visit us at pacvue.com. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.